Magnus with the white pieces opens with e4. We have the Karo Khan on the board. Knight comes out to f3, d5, and Magnus plays d3. This line where you are ready to go into an endgame. And Ihor is like, Magnus, you might be the endgame goat, but I'm going to take you on here because I've prepared this line, attacks the pawn. Knight comes out, g6, wanting to get the bishop out in a very interesting way. The question is the king on d1 a strength or a weakness? Magnus, let's see how he plays. Knight to e1. Oof. Okay, bishop comes out to h6. A threat is now created to take and take on e4. So Magnus solidifies the structure. And Samonenkov can actually castle here, bring his rook to d8. He first plays his bishop to e6 on this diagonal here. And Magnus adjusts himself in the chair now. One idea can be c3 and king c2. He plays his pawn to a4. Now notice this move. This is the kind of move which helps you gain space on the queen side. Knight develops here. Ihor playing this very well. a5 played, threatening to play perhaps a6 to soften up the queen side. The question is, what should black do now? And I think Magnus has also very thoughtfully chosen this opening against a player like Samonenko, who's a young talent. By the way, a good move here, knight to e5. f4 is out of question because the bishop controls it. Maybe knight d3, offering a trade, could be one of the ideas here. And now black can also think about long castling to get the rook straight away down the d file. It's in positions like this that I'm always curious, what will Magnus do? He generally comes up with very interesting solutions. First, he goes knight d3. And Ihor goes back with his other knight, which makes so much sense because he wants to take and then bring his knight to e5 or even c5 for that matter, which would be a great square. And Magnus's time is now 1 minute 56 seconds while Ihor has 2 minutes 30 seconds. Magnus goes knight to b3 and he's essentially saying to black, you can't come to c5. Now bishop takes bishop, knight takes c1, taken. So now if you take here, I'll take back with the knight. He goes long castles. Oof, a very interesting move. And Magnus goes king d2. He notices that the king will be well placed on c3. Wow, that is extremely smart by Magnus. Because you see the knight is at an diagonal's distance, so it cannot give a check. g5 played here. And Magnus plays king c3. Beautiful maneuver, I must say, this king d2, king c3. Understanding that the king is safe here. And now bishop comes out to e2. He plays his king to c7. And the question is, can Magnus play h4 and create play down the h file? He does it. Pawn to h4 played. This is why Magnus is the endgame goat. He doesn't really create threats, but he creates threats. He creates these ghosts in your head where you're thinking like, okay, what is he planning? He wants to take here. Should I push the pawn to g4? Should I play h6? He plays h6 and now Magnus takes on e5. Knight takes on e5 and he brings his knight to d3. How is Magnus kind of assessing this endgame, like after the knight trade, which I think black must do, taking the knight here? Is he thinking of taking back with the pawn so that later he can push his pawn in the center to d4? Wow, that is really something. He takes on d3 and Magnus takes back with the pawn. Wow. And now c5. I like this move because you are stopping the move d4, but Magnus may have prepared b4 here to take and then maybe later on try for d4 break. You can see that Ihor has gone down on the clock. He has 1 minute 14 seconds. Magnus 1 minute 41 seconds. Takes on g5 so that black does not attack the g2 pawn. And now after 8g, you simply move in with the rook, attacking the e7 pawn. So he takes on g5, attacking the g2 pawn. And now can we simply go pawn to g4? Yes, he plays his pawn to g4. Now this is a weakness. You can't play f5 easily. Rook comes to c5, gives a check. The king goes back, and now Ihor has basically understood a5 and b2. Both are weak here. But can Magnus just simply give up the b2 pawn and tuck his king onto the e3 square, which means that he can actually chop off the pawn on h6. These are important decisions to be made. And Magnus goes and chops off. Rook takes b2 check. You can see his expression there. He's trying to assess the position. Is it good enough for a win? Rook b3 played, keeping the pressure here. He wants to go bishop c4. Can Magnus go rook to h7? Or there is even g5 attacking the bishop here. Oh my goodness. So many possibilities here. He goes g5. And now the sharp game begins. If you take here, you lose the bishop. So you will go bishop c4. And then I take the pawn, you take the pawn here. Insane. What's going to happen next? He takes on f6. Ihor takes back. E takes f6. And now, do you take back with the rook? Magnus is currently a pawn up, but he's going to lose the pawn on d3, and a draw in this game would really dampen his chances of finishing in top 4. He goes rook d1 and he protects this. An important move now is to go b6 and get rid of this pawn and create your own passers here on the queen side. That's an important thing, but you're really tempted to save this pawn. Something like rook d6. He goes f5. Oof. Very interesting move here. And if Magnus takes here, then maybe bishop d5, rook e8, the king would be exposed. So I think taking the pawn may not be the best idea. With 30 seconds on the clock, Magnus goes king to f4. Lovely move now, threatening to take the bishop here on c4. It's very important to take fe4, because after dc4, you can go rook f8, check, and take on f3, and good drawing chances. But do not take the pawn on d3. That would be a mistake, because I mean, it's the most tempting move, because you have 3 attackers and you have 2 defenders. He takes it, and Magnus has seen it. Check, king c8. He takes on d3 with the rook, and now bishop takes, and basically e takes f5. Oh, he goes e5 even. What insane understanding by Magnus, that in this position, in spite of being a pawn down, he is winning. This is just magic. This is wizardry on the board. e6, king comes to d8, king moves in. And what's really beautiful is that this pawn on f5 stops any checks. Rook e3, so that e7 later, the rook controls it. Rook takes pawn f4, the pawn is queening. e7 check. If king e8 check here, he goes king c8, maybe you can snatch another pawn. Magnus trying to calculate with 22 seconds, finds another beautiful move. If you take the rook, I queen. So rook goes back to e1, but now the f pawn is stopped, and you can go king f7. Exquisite play. Oof. Beautiful play by Magnus Carlsen. I have used the word oof so many times in this game. Queens takes, king takes. And now we have a rook versus few pawns, but the pawns are not advanced enough. Magnus is winning here. He's played a beautiful game of chess. a6 pushed, pawn to c5. Now 2 black pawns rushing down. Rook b7. He goes king c6. He snatches 1 pawn. King goes to b6 trying to get a pawn. Rook a8. Played f3. King comes to d7. And what is Magnus going to put his rook behind the pawn c4. He brings his rook here. If you push, I'll take here. He takes on a6, king c6. Now a mate is threatened. He pushes the pawn, and Magnus checkmates him. Gives his hand out to shake it. And that is a victory for Magnus. I think you can see the look on his face. He's happy with the game that he's played. And that was really a beautiful game played by Magnus. Ihor Samunenkov tried his best, defended with all his might, but it was not to be. Magnus Carlsen, the endgame GOAT.